Hello everybody. In today's video we have an interesting camera here. It's a Minolta Maxxum Elite. So this camera is basically a copy, or actually an alternate version of a Minolta 300 SI camera. Just with a little more bells and whistles, if you will. You can see the panorama here. But in any case, the camera came to us with a problem, not being able to control the aperture on the lens. So this is a pretty common issue with most Maxxum cameras. And the problem is the aperture base mechanism fails. After a while, after, I don't know, a few years or what have you, there's different variances of aperture bases. Certain models carry one specific type of aperture base. The other models carry a different type that lasts a little longer. So you can see here that this aperture ring is all the way in the bottom, where it should be all the way here at the top. That tells me right away that this is the problem. Basically, the only remedy I have is to replace the aperture mechanism and then possibly try to refurbish it, if depending on the line of issues with that aperture mechanism. Okay, so what we'll do next is basically take you through the steps of fully disassembling the camera and then ultimately replacing that failed aperture mechanism. All right, so let's get going. First thing is the bottom cover. We have no battery in here, so we're going to go ahead and remove the bottom plate first. Now this problem is really common. As I said, it's probably the most common issue with Maxxum 300 SI, 400 SI, 500 SI. From my recollection, I don't remember back in the day replacing anything else on these cameras because nothing really else failed. Now some other cameras like Minolta Maxxum 3000i or 5000i, in addition to aperture, also suffered from a bad autofocus motor as well. But besides that, those are pretty much the only two issues that these cameras exhibited. Okay. Go ahead and remove this little plate here. There we go. So that way we can separate film door completely. There we go. All right, so the next thing that goes is the front cover. Got a couple of screws here on the front. We don't get a lot of these Maxxum cameras anymore, and I'm guessing the reason being is that customers simply do not feel that it's economical for them to repair these cameras. It's not like it's an older 35mm manual camera. These AF cameras are not really that popular, or not as popular as, let's say, manual cameras, X700, X370 and such. Okay, here's our panel and our screw. Now we have to work with few screws to separate the top cover. There's a couple of screws in the battery chamber. Okay, so now these are cameras with flashes. So there's a main capacitor that may or may not be fully charged. So what we need to do first is try to discharge it, otherwise we can get electrocuted while we're disassembling the camera, and they can short out the board and cause a little bit of physical harm as well. It's not fun to get electrocuted by this cap. So we're gonna go ahead and slightly lift up this LCD board, and we'll have access to the 2 leads from the capacitor. There we go. So there's 2 leads over here, and get my discharger here. Yep, if there is no sound coming out of the discharger, that means that this cap is in fact empty. All right, so I think we're good here. Can continue desoldering top cover. Been quite a while since I worked on this model, so I have to recall the steps, proper steps here, and nothing really bad could happen if I don't follow the right steps, but just easier to disassemble it if you do follow the right routine. Okay, so now we're gonna lift up the winding mechanism here carefully. There you go, this is what it is here, the spool, and this is our aperture base here. Gonna release it here, flip the camera over. All right, That's a pressure plate for the aperture flex board. Now we're going to remove the lens mount. So what I'm doing here is I'm disconnecting the PCB board from the battery contacts. It's a little tedious process, so I'm gonna have to take my time a little bit here. One last pin to disconnect, to desolder it, and we should be okay. There we go. Now we got movement. As you can see now, we can lift up this PCB board freely here. And the next step would be removing the front panel. Two more screws on the back. There we go. Now we have it out and we have access to our aperture base. So what we'll do next, I'll make a little notch, a little mark where to position the replacement one. All right, I'm gonna remove two screws holding the aperture base. That's one, and that's the other one. Okay. Here's the replacement base. Go ahead and secure it next. Okay, now we're gonna basically work in reverse, putting everything back in place. Okay, we've got our panel back. Just gonna adjust the positioning of the wires. There we go. Everything looks good here. Okay, so what I'll do next is clean this flex contact and screw it back together. Go ahead and clean the aperture contact as well. All right, so what do we have left is reconnect these couple of wires here to the board, and then we're gonna go ahead and solder the wires from the top cover. Okay. Actually, let's finish the bottom portion first. That'd be easier. There we go. There. Let's go ahead and solder these 3 wires as well. Okay. Make sure we didn't forget any soldering points here. Everything looks right. Everything looks good. Okay, we got black and gray, black, orange, red and purple. Everything looks right. Put this top cover back in place here. Okay, and then finally the bottom cover. Okay, now we're ready to run a test. Let's put our battery in there. Turn the camera on. There you go. It charged, if you heard it, it charged that aperture right away into the right position, which is, if I flip the camera here, is basically give or take between 2 and 3 o'clock. Okay, now it's nice and tight. As I release it, you see it's going down and up, down and up. Okay, so everything seems to be operating properly and our flash works. Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the battery and do some external cleaning now. Make this camera look presentable from the outside now that it's fully functioning, and then later on I'll test it with the film, make sure everything is working as it should, which I've done before, but I'll double check it a couple more times. Perfect. So this will do it for us for this Minolta Maxxum camera. All right, thank you for watching.